Oh, before I say this, you have to pay close attention to my introduction because it contains a lot of trinities, and you have to listen closely to keep them straight. Okay? So he got his PhD from Trinity Theological Seminary, which is in Indiana, in 1983. And then, I presume that was a theological degree. And in 1998, he completed a PhD in archaeology from Trinity Southwest University, which is in Albuquerque. And then in 1990, he went to work for Trinity Southwest, where he is still on the faculty, and he is now Dean of the College of Archaeology at Trinity Southwest. He's also the chief archaeologist of the Tel Al-Hammam excavation project in Jordan, which is going to be the subject of his talk tonight, titled Sodom, Discovery of a Lost City. Dr. Collins.
Well, this will be fun. We're gonna test turning the lights out and see what happens. I really want you to focus on this, because this isn't really impressive, but hopefully this will be. So you don't need to see me; you really need to see that. I'm going to be going very fast tonight. This lecture includes a lot of information, a lot of different material. Even though we're talking about archaeology and the Bible, we are not going to be. This is a faith science thing, right? We're not going to be talking about faith tonight. We're going to be talking about science. We're talking about science, method, procedure. How do we go about identifying the location of a biblical city? And then, if you don't know where it is, how do you then go about finding it? What do you do? What's the process? And then what do you have to do after that to make some reasonable identification? One thing we all know is that the book of Genesis is the most debated book in the Bible. The reason for that, the reasons are many. One reason is that there's so many views of how the book of Genesis came to be, and I'm not going to go into any of those. What I am going to focus on tonight is geography. I am going to get you stirred up about thinking geographically, and how exciting could, I mean, that's terribly exciting. Didn't you just always just get thrilled about geography?
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
Good. Most people, in fact, hadn't thought about it too much, but they suffered through it in school somewhere along the line. But this is a purely geographical exercise. Of course, it launches into archaeology, and it gets into all kinds of things. We're going to poke our nose into astrophysics later on. But let's get some preliminary stuff. We are a joint scientific project with the Department of Antiquities in Jordan. We are entering our 10th excavation season. 9 seasons thus far. If you'd like to go excavate with us in a place that looks just like New Mexico, in fact, in the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, just north of the Dead Sea, you're welcome to do that. We have, I think, 90 volunteers signed up so far for our season starting in January.
Where's the sign-up sheet?
I will let you know. Okay, and you'll have a lot of fun. If you want to get a good read, sort of at a lay level, there's a lot of technical information in it as well. The readability of it is totally due to my co-author, Dr. Latane Scott. I just gave her the technical stuff, and then she wrote it and made sense of it. But this just came out last year with Simon & Schuster, and that's the book. So give it for Christmas. All the proceeds go to help support the Tel Al-Hammam excavation project. If you want to get the book, go to discoveringsodom.com, and you can get about 8 places where you can get it online, including Amazon, of course. It's probably always cheaper. If you want to get on our email update list, then you just, digsodom.com, that's the website. If you want to know everything about what we're doing, you want to see the technical reports, if you want to see journal articles, my article even from Biblical Archaeology Review from last year is in there. Follow along with us on the website, Dig Sodom. By the way, the real name of the website is talalhammam.com. but nobody can remember that. They don't know how to spell it. So digsodom.com, we got that one, it's easier. If you would like to get email updates, during the dig season, what happens is every single day I sit down before I go to bed at night in the field and write what happened, and my photographers give me stuff to send you. You should see what's coming out of the ground. You hear the theories, you know, Tuesday's theory, you get to see it overturned on Thursday, and back in the saddle with the same, back to that theory on Monday. And so you got to see the whole process of archaeology being played out over the entire 8 weeks, every single day, which is fun. You can get that by just take your smartphone or even your stupid phone, and I have a stupid phone, but I can still do this. I can text dig Sodom to the number 22828, follow the instructions, and you'll get on the TF list, where you'll get all kinds of stuff from me all the time, and from the various members of our staff. Now, the existence and location of Sodom and Gomorrah and the other cities of the plain is a perfect test case for the historical veracity of the Bible, particularly those patriarchal narratives in which it's found, and for at least 3 reasons. One, most scholars, including archaeologists, historians, and theologians, doubt that the cities ever existed at all. Okay? They just doubt that they ever existed at all. In fact, William Deaver, Professor Emeritus of Archaeology at Arizona State, sees me at the ASOR meetings, American Schools of Oriental Research meetings, which we're going to be at in a month, or less than a month. Every time he sees me, he comes up and tugs on my elbow and he says, "Are you still looking for those non-existent cities?" Well, I'm going to pick on Dr. Deaver here shortly. But the second thing is, most scholars who do believe in their existence have searched for them toward the south end of the Dead Sea in vain, in spite of what you may have seen on Discovery Channel, History Channel. By the way, watch the stuff they've done on us on Discovery, History, Nat Geo. And PBS will be on site this year doing a documentary. So that'll be out sometime, I suppose, next year. But they've been looking in the wrong place. Third, if a legitimate, scientifically rigorous investigation into the whereabouts of those cities could actually find them, and possibly even confirm that they were actually destroyed by fire out of the sky, as the text says, it would be a fairly good representation of the Bible's accuracy, at least on certain points. Okay? Now, we're not going to talk about theology tonight, but we're going to be talking about geography, history, events that are testable and checkable in the material record of the area. So, 12 years of excavation now and research in that area has led us to a site, which we've been excavating for 10 years now, has led us to a site that we believe is the actual site of Sodom. And there's a whole lot of reasons for that, and we're going to get into it. But there are a whole lot of minimalists, by the way. I'm in the archaeology world, and most of you are not. So let me define that term: minimalist. Minimalist. That's somebody who believes that a minimal amount of material in the Bible, Old Testament in particular, is historical. Minimal. They usually can't tell you what about it, but minimal. They just don't like to believe anything. Okay, and if you're on the opposite side of that spectrum, you're a maximalist. So I guess people would accuse me of being a maximalist, and some people are minimalists. They don't believe anything in the Bible is historical. Well, here's Dr. D. By the way, Bill and I are friends, right? But he pokes at me and I poke at him, so I'm going to take a poke at him. In fact, I've had him to Albuquerque twice, and to lecture to my students. Not on the Bronze Age. Iron Age is okay. Bronze Age is a little out to lunch. But there was a front page article about our dig in the Wall Street Journal back in, I think, 2007. And in that article, they tracked down Dr. Deaver to sort of take a pot shot at me. And what he said was this, and he aimed it at me: "No responsible scholar goes out with a trowel in one hand and a Bible in the other." Okay. I don't like being called irresponsible. This is what I said in response. No responsible scholar digging in the Holy Land goes out without a trowel in one hand and a Bible in the other. You can't do it. I mean, even worst case scenario, the Bible derives from the Iron Age, from 1000 BC onward. Even if Moses didn't have anything to do with writing the Pentateuch, it was made up by a bunch of Judahite priests. It's still the best geographical source we have from the ancient world. Almost, you could say, bar none. There's nothing else really could compare to it. So you have to. By the way, Deaver always keeps his Bible in his hip pocket. He doesn't tell anybody that, but he does, because he excavated the famous Gezer Gate, the site of Gezer in Israel. Now he says that's a Solomonic gate. It dates to the Solomonic period. Solomon's not mentioned anywhere but the Bible. Oops. So he does use the Bible. Well, the stories comprising the text of Genesis are what I call serial geographies. They take you from place to place to place. Everything in the Old Testament, in fact, the entire book of Genesis, is laid out as a map of stories covering the landscape. Every detail of the Near Eastern landscape is included in the book of Genesis. And they know that landscape well. Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Levant, in between, even parts of Asia Minor. We're going over that land in the book of Genesis. And so this is a serial geography, and they write the stories place to place. No story in the Old Testament is ever told without place. You will always know where you are, if you know where that is. Sometimes they mention places we don't exactly know where that is, but they're always going to tell you where it's happening. And often they're going to tell you how they got there, where it is, okay, on the landscape. Now, here's a significant fact that's overlooked by a lot of scholars. And I was the first one to bring this up. I got highly criticized for saying this. And how many of you are scientists of one sort or another? Okay. I said in a lecture in Amman at the Friends of Archaeology of Jordan a few years ago, I made the statement, ancient Near Eastern writers didn't ever use fictitious geographies. And I said it just like that. And the director at ACOR, American Center for Oriental Research, raised her hand. She said, Dr. Collins, you should never say never. It's not a scientific thing to say. And I said, good, Barbara. I said, I'm very interested in this subject. Can you think of an example of a fictitious geography? Is there anything like a 5-acre wood or, Middle Earth in amongst ancient Near Eastern writers? And she said, no, I can't think of an example. I said, well, when you do, would you please let me know, email me, let me know about it, because I would love to see that example, because as far as I know, there isn't one. And I said, oh, by the way, when you find one, please give me the criteria whereby you determine it's fictitious. I've seen her a lot of times since then. She never sent me that email because she knows I'm right. Now, let me just give you a couple of examples. Here's the Bronze Age Adventures of Sinuhe. This is a famous Egyptian story. Scholars argue till they're blue in the face as to whether the story and the characters in the story are fact or fiction. But guess what? This is from probably the best historical atlas of the Bible lands ever done by Anson Rainey, Hebrew University. And look at it. He is tracking Sinuhe through his travels. Okay? So whether the story and the characters are fact or fiction, the geography is real. It's mappable. Here's another one. This is the Adventures of Idrimi. This is a Northwest Semitic story. And again, scholars don't know whether the storyline or the characters are really fact or fiction, but they can track the geography of it. Okay? So whether the stories amongst ancient Near Eastern writers are fact or fiction, they are all layered over a real world geography with which they are probably intimately familiar. Okay? Now, on the basis of that, no matter how you slice it, the biblical geography across the board is a fact-based geography, and that includes Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah are layered over a real world geography. Places that people in antiquity, when they wrote their stories, identified piles of ruins as these cities. They knew where they were, they knew exactly how to get there. And they have told us how to get there. What's interesting is if we follow their directions to the site, and we don't find it, if the site is simply barren of settlements that could possibly be associated with Sodom, then we might say, oh, the biblical text is wrong. That would be a scientific approach. We go and we look at it, we test the hypothesis, and lo and behold, it doesn't pan out, and we could say then, oh, it's not where the Bible says it should be, therefore it doesn't exist. But that's not how Dr. Deaver got there. He just simply, a priori said, no, Sodom and Gomorrah, fire out of the sky. No, it's myth. Okay. Well, is it? Now, this is something that I do. It's just the way I am. All scientists are a little anal in this way. For well-known Old Testament towns and villages, how many geographical data points exist in the text by which those biblical sites can be located on Bible maps? Did you ever wonder how those cities got on the Bible maps anyway? This is how they do it. You look at the geographical data embedded in the biblical text and you try to triangulate around, working from the knowns to the unknowns and so forth, just as you would normally do in any investigation. So I came up with what I call my Geo Top 40 in the Bible. The top 40 Old Testament sites. Okay, the most famous top 40. Now I'm not going to give you the top 40, but I am going to give you the top 10. Okay? Here they are. Now, the number following is the number of geographical indicators embedded in the Old Testament, which help us identify that site. And a geographical indicator might be something like this. It's near the Jordan River. Or it's west of Jerusalem. Or it's near this mountain. It's next to this river. It's in this area. Okay? So we take directions, any named geographical locations, we take that as an indicator. We also take chronological indicators as being part of of this data. Why? Because if it says that if it's in the time of Joshua, and it says that this particular city existed during the time of Joshua, we know Joshua belongs to the late Bronze Age. So if we go to that site, and it says, the Bible says Joshua destroyed it, we go to that site, it has no late Bronze Age ruins. Uh-oh. It's either the wrong site or Joshua never showed up, or the story is not true. So anyway, that's the way it works. Look at this. All these sites are on the map. Look at Jerusalem comes in with a whopping 18 geographical indicators in the biblical text as to its location. But look what's number one. There are at least 25 indicators in the Old Testament to the location of Sodom. That's different bits of information about where it's located. Now, if you can locate Jerusalem with 18, if you can locate Bet Shemesh with 8, why can't you locate Sodom with 25? Do you know that if you pulled your... go home and look at your Bible map. It's that uninspired section in the back of your Bible. Bible map. You won't find Sodom on it. You find Jerusalem, you find Jericho. You won't find Sodom. In 99%, we've run the statistics on this, in 99% of published Bible maps, Sodom never appears, period. They don't even put it on there. If it does appear, it has a question mark next to it. So, why? Why is there this consensus of confusion about the existence or location of Sodom?
Because it's Sodom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People are afraid of that word because in this present political climate, there's an obvious connection here. By the way, we're going to dive headlong into that before we're through tonight. homosexuality was not the reason Sodom was destroyed. Okay? By the way, I give you my bottom 5. Okay. No, the reason is because look how few indicators there are in the text for these cities, and they're all on Bible maps. If you can have 3 little indicators, or 4 for putting a city on a Bible map, why can't Sodom make it on? Very interesting. Just something to consider. Now, here's something we also noticed. Almost all the major explorer scholars, and these are people working for the U.S. government, for the British government, cartographers, map makers, and all kinds of, they're geologists and so on. Looking at this area, doing work in the 19th century, almost all of them put Sodom and Gomorrah northeast of the Dead Sea. Almost all of them. Here's a map, and they did it for good reasons. Here's a map influenced by scholars like Tristram Thompson, Merrill, and so on. Look where they put the 5 cities of the plain. It's north of the Dead Sea. How did they get there? They got there by following the geography of Genesis. Okay? And, okay, leave it that way. How did 20th century scholars primarily wind up at the south end of the Dead Sea with Sodom? I'll tell you how they wound up at the south end of the Dead Sea. They ignored the geography of Genesis. In fact, what I say is, it's like reading the biblical text, it's like reading the Hebrew text upside down. It is. It's just totally screwy how they got there. But the primary culprit for all this is the most powerful archaeological scholar of the 20th century, W.F. Albright. In fact, almost every Bible dictionary article, Bible encyclopedia article, commentary article about Sodom and Gomorrah is going to defer to Albright. Where did Albright put the cities of the plain? He located them in the shallow basin underneath the water of the south end of the Dead Sea. Guess what? Since then it's dried up. No cities. By the way, if he'd ever thought twice about this, I mean, he's a brilliant scholar. By the way, he's a genius. Almost without peer in terms of his breadth of knowledge, Near Eastern languages, archaeology, I mean, just unbelievable. But he forgot to read the text. And he forgot to think about it because the south end of the Dead Sea fills and empties, according to the rainfall, many times in a fluctuating pattern like this through history. It's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. Stupid place to build a city. Because even when it's down and the area is just a dry, arid, crackling, salty area, even when it's down, you get a big downpour. What happens? This is the lowest spot on the face of the earth, folks. The water's got to go somewhere. And so this was just a bad idea. We now know that nobody ever even put a campfire down there. It's a bad place, all right? Here's also something we noted. 100% of the scholars, 100%, who give us a critical evaluation of Genesis chapter 13, which is where most of the data is, put the cities of the plain north of the Dead Sea. Well, the flip of that is true. 100% of scholars who put the cities of the plain at the south end of the Dead Sea never give us an evaluation. Never, ever give us an evaluation of Genesis 13. Never. Not one. Interesting. So, where's the key? Genesis 13. So, that's where we're going to go. Now, what we always say, this is quite simple. We just want to be in the right time, in the right place with the right stuff. Right time, let's start with place. Right place, right time, right stuff. Now, let's look at the right place. So, how do you go about locating an ancient city? Here's how you do it. Okay, it's going to be a little pedantic. I'm sorry. This is the way it is. This is school tonight. Analyze ancient text in order to extract embedded geographical data. Analyze the geographical language for specificity. That is, the language literal, formulaic, or hyperbolic, maybe phenomenological. assess both the known and unknown geographical quanta from extracted textual geodata, assemble a theoretical map based on that data. And when you do that, then you analyze the chronological occupations, because those are included in the geodata, and those parameters are going to be looked at, because if you don't find the appropriate archaeological periods in that site, then it's not going to be the right place. So the chronological data has to be analyzed as well. 6, we got to analyze the relevant physical data from archaeology, geology, paleoclimatology, paleobotany, biology, all kinds of other disciplines, whatever is appropriate to the site. And then we have to assess the points of correspondence and or departures between the theoretical text map and the physical data that's gotten on the ground. That's how you do it. This is the procedure. Now, a lot of scholars, probably not in this room, but a lot of scholars have an aversion to using what they consider to be religious texts when doing archaeology, as you saw Deaver's sentiment on that. But this kind of anti-textual position easily explodes as a straw man argument when you realize that every single ancient Near Eastern culture and writer from those cultures has a theological predisposition, has a theological axe to grind. They all come from a religion. There's no such thing as an ancient Near Eastern writer who isn't religious to the core. Okay? Therefore, just because Tutmosis III talks to his god Amun-Ra, of whom he is the incarnation, right? Just because he converses with God doesn't mean we should throw out his account of the Battle of Megiddo, because it's a very good account of that historical event. But if you took this approach, if you took the approach that most people take to the Bible, to other ancient literature, you'd never know anything about the ancient world, because you're going to stay away from everybody who's religious. Right? Well, it's a dumb idea. So you've got to deal with all the text. It doesn't matter Abraham talks to God. It doesn't matter that Moses talks to God. What it matters is what Moses and the other people tell us is what's happening in the text factual. If it's testable, then we should test it, and we can see. All right. But this is exactly what scholars have been doing with the Bible. People have even suggested we got to do away with biblical archaeology because you can't use the Bible in archaeology. That's doing science, with an agenda. It isn't. The text says certain things. It's perfectly legitimate to test those certain things. Isn't it? Of course it is. And so we can deal with it in the way we're going to deal with it. Right place, geography. Here we go. Now, you've never sat up at night worrying about the location of Sodom, I'm sure. You will now. You will not sleep tonight. All right. Why Genesis 13? I'll tell you why. It's the only narrative, it's the only historical passage in the Bible specifically written to take us to Sodom using geographical directions. It's the only one. There isn't another. This is it. That's why you would use it. All right. Here it is. I've cut out the non-geological stuff, and geographical stuff, and here it is. So Abraham went up from Egypt to the Negev. Lot went with him. From the Negev, he went from place to place. See, there's that serial geography until he came to Bethel, to the place between Bethel and Ai. Lot looked up and saw that the whole plain of the Jordan was well watered, like the garden of Yahweh, like the land of Egypt, toward Zoar. Actually, I think it's Zoan, but that's another issue. So, Lot chose for himself the whole plain of the Jordan and set out toward the east. Abram lived in the land of Canaan, while Lot lived among the cities of the plain and pitched his tent near Sodom. So, there's the main text. Now, in this text, the word plain appears 3 times. It appears 10 times between this passage and Genesis chapter 19. So whenever you talk about Sodom, you talk about this plain. Well, what is that? There are a lot of words in Hebrew, bika, emek, mishor, arava, that mean flat place, plain, valley, bottomland, and so on. These are the main ones, okay? But that word translated plain here isn't one of these. It's not even a geographical term at all. Now, so what is it? It is this, kikar. Now what does kikar mean? With the definite article in Hebrew, ha-kikar, the kikar. It means disc or circle. Okay? In the Old Testament, 55 of the 68 times that it's used, 13 times it's used in a geographical sense. All the rest of the time, it either means a talent, that is a flat circular disc or weight of metal. Okay, a flat circular disc of metal, that's a talent. You read about Solomon collected 666 talents of gold and so on. Talents, flat circular discs of metal like huge coins, or flat disc-shaped loaves of bread, which we have a pretty good handle on here. Right? So I always say tortillas. Kikar means talent or tortillas. That's what it means. By the way, outside the Bible, it's found throughout ancient Near Eastern literature. Akkadian, it's found in Ugaritic, it's found in Egyptian, it's found everywhere, and it always just simply means the same thing. Basically a circle, but mostly two things, talents and tortillas. Period.
How did you make the leap from plain and the non-Israel words
Right.
in Hebrew to kikar?
It is the word kikar in Hebrew. That's the word that's translated in all those instances. Every time
So where
you
it says plain,
it's
it
kikar.
says, it's, okay, I understand,
kikar.
sorry.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting is outside the Old Testament, kikar is never ever used geographically. Never. Talents or tortillas. No geography. Now, what's interesting is the Bible uses it this way 13 times. It's extremely rare to use kikar in this way. It's what in linguistics we call a phenomenological secondary referent. That is, we refer to flat-topped hills out here as...
Masons.
Is the word mesa geographical term? No. But we use it because it looks like it. Phenomenologically, it looks like a mesa. Looks like a table. Well, that's what they're doing. In fact, you should remember that it's cities, Sodom and Gomorrah, the cities of the kikar. That's the Hebrew term. It's also in the kikar plain of the Jordan. I didn't put this in the presentation, but I'll say it here. The word Ha Yarden, the Jordan, means the descent of what? This is the Rift Valley, of water. It's the watershed. Everything goes there. It's going into the lowest spot on the face of the earth. It's going to drain down and go into the Dead Sea. So, Ha Yarden means the descending of the fresh water. Because the River Jordan is a freshwater system. Do you suppose that Ha Yarden would terminate, the descent would terminate when it reaches the salty Dead Sea at the lowest elevation on the face of the earth? Yeah, the descent terminates at the north end of the Dead Sea. So if these are the cities of the Kikar of the Jordan, that ought to say something. Well, anyway, here's the Jordan coming down from the north, and right about 30 kilometers north of the Dead Sea, it widens out into a large circle-shaped alluvial plain. Of course, Moses and the writers of the Old Testament didn't have satellite images, but when you're on the ground, it really looks like a shallow disc with green all around its edges. And so that's what it looks like. This is the Kikar, the disc of the Jordan. It's the southern alluvial valley of the Jordan. Here it is. It doesn't take much to see it. And so the Kikar of the Jordan is north of the Dead Sea because Ha Yarden means the descent and never refers to anything other than the Jordan River. Go check out every reference to the Jordan and you'll find that's true. It also never includes any part of the Dead Sea. But in fact, if you take these 5 passages, here's what you collate these 5 passages together, and what they say is this. The Jordan, the descent, ends at the mouth of the Jordan, at the bay of the Dead Sea, below Pisgah. Now, what does that look like on the map? Well, Numbers 34. I'm not going to read this, I'm going to go over this. But if we read all of that, that's what it would give you. And Joshua 15 and 18 will also give you the boundaries. And here's what it looks like. So there's the Jordan River, and there's the Kikar. Okay? There's the mouth of the Jordan, and there's Pisgah. That location over the Dead Sea is a lock. There isn't any information in the Old Testament that would put the Kikar anywhere else but right there. It ends at the bay of the Dead Sea, at the mouth of the Jordan, below Pisgah. So there it is. Pisgah, Nebo, Mount Nebo, same place. The Kikar of the Jordan was well watered. You go back to the text, like the Garden of Yahweh. It's watered like the land of Egypt. Now, how is the Garden of Yahweh? How's Eden watered? It says a river ran through it. Now, broken into 4 channels outside the garden, but a river ran through it. So it was cut by a river. And watered like Egypt. How is Egypt watered? The Nile overflows its banks annually in its delta region. And the Nilotic civilization, 3,000 years of it, rides on the overflowing of the Nile, the inundations, and they plant behind the receding waters in the newly deposited silt. That's exactly what happens in the Jordan Valley. It overflows its banks. It creates a wonderful system that they can plant behind in the spring, but this is also the best watered agroscape in the region. All these stars are springs. There's one in Jericho. That's why there's only one Bronze Age site on the western side of the Jordan. On the other side of the Jordan, we've got lots of water, lots of springs. We've got several perennial rivers which don't exist on the western side, and this is the best watered agroscape in the region. Now, High Yarden, that's the freshwater system. Yam Hamelach, the Sea of Salt, this is dead water, and they do not mix. They're not mixed in the Bible. The text also said, as you remember, that Lot could see the entire, and it even uses the word coal, the word entire, he could see the entire Kikar of the Jordan from the area near Bethel and Ai. Now, let's look at that. I know where Bethel and Ai are. By the way, those are the traditional sites of Sodom and Gomorrah at the south end of the Dead Sea. Right. Here's Bethel and Ai. We excavated at Ai for 6 years. We know what you can and cannot see from there, especially if you walk over toward the scarp that overlooks the Jordan Valley. You cannot see those southern sites. They're blocked by hills. It's impossible. You cannot look into that. On a good day, you can just catch a glimpse of the north end of the Dead Sea from that location. That's what you can see from Bethel and Ai, and that's where Lot was standing when he looks over into the Jordan Valley. All right? It gets worse for the southern advocates because it says Lot traveled eastward from Bethel and Ai, pitching his tent toward Sodom. Well, here it is again. There's Bethel and Ai. He travels eastward, pitches his tent as far as Sodom, in the Kikar of the Jordan, which he could see from that location. So, to us it's a lock. That's where Lot went. Sodom, therefore, can only be there. It cannot be in the Dead Sea area because none of the geography works. All right. What's interesting is that known Egyptian map lists and the serial geography of the Pentateuch presented Transjordan sites from south to north. If you go all through the Pentateuchal materials, all of the geography takes you from south to north in the Transjordan. We're always moving south to north. Why? Perfectly Egyptian thing to do, because you do it from the reference of Egypt. So that's what they did. What's interesting is it's reasonable assumption that a formulaic geography of the cities of the plain would likewise follow from south to north, since everything else in the Transjordan is listed from south to north. So when you say Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, you're probably traveling from south to north. Now what that does is this. You have 3 doublets in this passage. Bethel and Ai. Bethel's big town, Ai's little town. Ai's 4 acres. Bethel's about 12, 15 acres. Both been excavated. All right, so Bethel, big town, Ai, small town. Bethel, Ai. Sodom, Gomorrah. Which one's bigger? Sodom's always first. It's the bigger one. Sodom, big town, Gomorrah, small town. Admah, Zeboim, same thing. Admah, the big town, Zeboim, the small town. Now, look at this. Sodom and Gomorrah is always listed before Admah and Zeboim. So which is the bigger of the 2 doublets? Sodom and Gomorrah. So if that is a reasonable assumption, which I think it is, then, since Sodom and Gomorrah and Zeboim doubles are always designated as separate entities, it's logical that the geographical distance between the two is greater than the distance between the members of the doublets. So it winds up like this, going north from the south. Sodom and Gomorrah, short distance. In fact, our partner site is one less than a mile away. It's about 1.5 kilometers. 20-minute walk to Gomorrah. Then there would be a longer distance between the doublets, and then you would have the doublets, a short distance. Zeboim, the small, by the way, Zeboim is plural. If you know your Hebrew, you have to have a pair of sites. Guess what? Just up the road, an 8-kilometer distance from Gomorrah, or actually 6 from Gomorrah, you go north, and you come to the second largest site in the region, Admah, and less than a mile from there, you have, on the same road, you have 2 Bronze Age sites sitting side by side, one on each side of the water. Okay? So, geography is stunning from that point of view. So, guess what? Here's the biblical, it's the Mickey Mouse configuration. This is the biblical map. This is the hypothetical map that we drew from that data. So, moving from south to north. Now, by the way, we already knew where all the ancient roadways are. This is old information to get to the ancient highways. They're all because they still use them. The topography demands only that certain routes can be used, so they're really obvious. So, coming from the south along the north-south road, you come to a big site, and right next door, a small site. Then you come to the second biggest site, and the 2 small sites right next to that, all while following the same road. Very interesting. Now, so that's our theoretical map. What's interesting about that theoretical map is that if you draw the entire area there, this is very shocking. When we first started our research back in 2002, there wasn't a single Jordanian, Israeli. The Jordanians off the hook. There wasn't a single Israeli, American, or European archaeological source or map of archaeological sites that had anything sitting on the eastern Jordan Disc. It looked just like that, blank. Nothing. But if you take those roads, all of these are the known roads, to En-Gedi, to Hebron, Jerusalem, to Bethel, to Beth-Shan, to Pella, to Gilead, to Rabat Ammon, modern day Ammon, to Heshbon, to Madaba, and then to Zoar. If you take any of those roads, you're going to come to a Bronze Age city. And now, you see, there's 2 major intersections here. Look at Jericho. But what's interesting is that nobody has anything on the eastern side of the river, but look what's really there. When we got to Jordan and actually started doing our ground research with Jordanian information, we found 14 major archaeological sites, most of them dating to the Bronze Age, all hugging that area. It's really phenomenal. Yet not a single one of those sites ever appears on an archaeological map published in Israel, America, or Europe.
But it did in Jordan?
In Jordan, they're on there because they have done surveys. They just don't publish archaeological maps for world consumption, for some reason. Now, what's interesting, here are the Bronze Age sites meeting the Kikar city's criteria. Here they are. The biggest one of those is Tal al-Hammam, the site we're going to look at in a minute. Okay, so there we go. Right place, no brainer. Right time frame. Well, that's not as easy, but let's just generalize here. Abraham belongs to the Middle Bronze Age. W.F. Albright knew that. Virtually all scholars agree that Abraham, if you take the biblical chronology more or less at face value, you wind up in the Middle Bronze Age. It's a fairly long period, 2000 BC to 1550 BC. He belongs somewhere in that. Culturally, he belongs there. Okay. Event-wise, his life belongs there because certain things can't happen unless he lives in that period of time. So, the biblical date. So here it is, the Middle Bronze Age, if you're not familiar with your archaeological chronology. Abraham and Lot lived somewhere in there. And some people say maybe he lived in the Iron Age. No, not really. You totally have to discard the biblical data in order to do that. But there are some that do. Genesis 10, though, 13 is not the end of the story. Genesis 10 pushes the cities of the plain well back before the time of Abraham. Genesis 10, the table of nations, mentions Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim. Right next door, it shares a passage with Babylon, Uruk, Akkad, the big cities of Mesopotamia. So, there it is. The early Bronze Age, Abraham and Lot. Genesis 10 puts the cities of the plain way back there. So if you're going to find the cities of the plain, you have to have cities that started in the early Bronze Age. By the way, why did I pick the early Bronze Age? I didn't tell you that. That's the time we know that the first urban centers are popping up. First urban centers in the world are being built during the early Bronze Age in Canaan. All right, so there they are. So, if we're going to find Sodom, we have to be in this time frame. We can't be really anywhere else. We've got to have a site that's continuously occupied from the early Bronze Age on through the middle Bronze Age, or at least mostly occupied during all those periods. Well, here she is. This is Tal el Hammam. She is the largest archaeological site in the southern Jordan Valley. We now know she is the largest Bronze Age city in the southern Levant. Period. Bigger than anything in Israel, bigger than anything else in Jordan, during about 80% of the Bronze Age. A couple of cities in Israel get a little bit bigger, but she has more satellites, so it's kind of a trade-off. Here she is. Now look, you can see the well-watered plain of the Jordan, heavy agricultural area even today, and you can see that she is overspread with the early Bronze Age, the intermediate Bronze Age, and the middle Bronze Age, which means she is continuously occupied. In fact, if we include the period before, she's continuously occupied from about 4600 BC down to her destruction in about 1700 BC. Continuously occupied. It wasn't a day that they weren't just living in the sun down there, drinking their Kool-Aid, while everybody else was either dying or freezing. So look at the map. Here are the sites on meeting all these criteria. Well, let's just stick them all back up there again. And of course the big dog, Tal el Hammam. There they are. Now, what happens when you ignore the biblical text in the case of geography? I'll show you what happens when you ignore the text. Now you know what sites are there. By the way, most of them, at least half of them, have been excavated. Iktanu, Hammam, Nimrin, Kaphraim. Okay? But watch what happens. Remember, I talked about Anson Rainey's excellent historical geography? Look at this. Here's his Chalcolithic site period map. Nothing. Blank. Here's his early Bronze Age site period map. Blank. Here's his intermediate Bronze Age site map. Blank. Here's his middle Bronze Age site map. Blank. No wonder everybody's looking for Sodom and Gomorrah somewhere else. Anson Rainey's the world's leading authority on the geography of the Holy Land. Bar none. By the way, we had long-running conversations. He agreed with me that Sodom and Gomorrah needed to go to the Kikar in the right place north of the Dead Sea on the map, and he died before that could happen. Rats! But others are getting it, finally. So, there they all are. Now, we satisfy every single geographical and chronological thing, but now what about the stuff? What about the southern, okay, let's do the southern sites. Could they be Sodom and Gomorrah? Here they are, Baba Dra and Numira, the traditional sites of Sodom and Gomorrah. Here's Baba Dra. Doesn't exactly look like the well-watered plain of the Jordan, now does it? No, because it isn't. Very small site, by the way. It's only 10 acres. It was destroyed in 2350 BC. Critical thinking here. It must kick in. Abraham was born 500 years later. How could that be Sodom? Doesn't work. It was also resettled immediately after it was destroyed. So it doesn't even have much of an occupational hiatus. So big problem for Baba Dra, but that's what most people who put it in the south say. Here's Numira. It was destroyed about 2600 BC after only existing for about 150 years. So, look at this. Here's Abraham and Lot in the Middle Bronze Age. Here's Baba Dra, destroyed in 2350. Here's Numira, destroyed in 2600 BC. And by the way, Tom Schaub, who excavated both of these sites, is actually contributing quite a bit to a new book that's coming out soon called the Kikar Dialogues. About 18 scholars, including myself, talking about the location of the cities of the plain. He's now given up on Babadra and Amira's Sodom and is looking toward the north. So, there they are. I mean, how do you get those two together? So, could they be the traditional sites of Sodom and Gomorrah? Nope, they're in the wrong place, they're in the wrong time, and you only get 2 strikes in this game. Out, gone. Here's the right stuff, though. Hammam is in the right place. It is the right time frame, we know that. But what about the right stuff? Well, part of the right stuff is, what does the text say about the city of Sodom? It was fortified. Genesis, not all sites are fortified. It was fortified. Genesis 19:1 says, Lot sat in the gateway of Sodom. All right? Here's the gate. Oh, this is the wall. This wall doesn't look that impressive here. Well, maybe it does. But that wall, this is the early Bronze Age city wall, is 18 feet thick. It surrounds 62 acres. It's an incredible site. It was blocked during the intermediate Bronze Age. Here's Dr. Lane Rittmeyer's reconstruction of it. We've now got another one that puts it about 3 meters higher. But anyway, here's the site. It's surrounded by a massive rampart system in the Middle Bronze Age. It has lots of towers. You can see them there. It has temples. It has palaces. It has all kinds of goodies. And you can see some of the areas in yellow of our excavation over the last 10 years. By the way, how do we know the rest of the site looks like that? Because it's all laying exposed to the surface. You can walk almost the entire perimeter of the tops of those city wall foundations and see the towers and so on. So it really isn't a matter of excavating all that much. You just got to excavate what's down inside the houses and the temples and so on. But a lot of the large architecture is showing through to the surface. This is Danette, my wife, and I standing atop the Middle Bronze Age rampart that surrounds the upper city. It is 33 meters high. What is that, 100 feet? 33 meters high, about 25 to 30 meters thick at the base, and about 7 meters at the top. It is made entirely of mud bricks. By the way, when you add the southern defenses to the upper city defenses, the lower defenses to the upper city defenses, we estimate that it took approximately 100 to 150 million mud bricks to build it. Very expensive, and it's the only all mud brick rampart system anywhere in the Middle East. Everybody else built it packed earth. Easier to pile up a big berm of dirt than to make it all of sun-dried bricks, individually made and laid. We think we were the first, therefore. Everybody else came, wow, that's cool, let's go build us one. How much did that cost? Whoops, that's a little too expensive. We got to tone it down a little bit, so let's just pile the earth. And that's what they did. Here's the way you do it, by the way. You have a revetment wall at the bottom. They built it up of mud bricks. They cover it over. And maybe or maybe not, most people do think there was a city wall of mud brick on the top. Without a stone foundation, you don't need one. On the lower city, this is one of our section drawings of the excavation in Field LA. And this is what it looks like in the early Bronze Age. And in the Middle Bronze Age, they built stabilizer walls in the city wall and filled in with some engineered fill, and then went up with their system. And you say, oh man, how can you have a rampart sitting against, it's called a freestand, this is called a supplemental rampart. How can you have a rampart built of mud bricks sitting against that wall? Are they going to tip the city wall over? No, because any engineers here?
The brick is a weak rock.
All the weight goes vertically. There's a separation between these two things, and it won't ever change because all the weight, bricks transfer all the weight vertically. So there's no pressure on that wall. And it's incredible. Not only that, this is the early Bronze Age city wall with 6 courses of solid stone foundation with some stable mud brick. They used that as the foundation of the thickest part of their rampart. It's brilliant. Brilliant piece of engineering. So anyway, that's kind of what that looks like. I think it was actually a 3-tiered thing, but I don't want to go into it now. Here it is. There's the early Bronze Age city wall going around the south side of the city. There's the Middle Bronze Age. They were actually still using the old wall when they built the new one. Therefore, it's sandwiched between the towers, the Middle Bronze towers on the outside. There's one of the entries to the towers. Here am I standing on one of the mud brick towers to the Middle Bronze Age period. Here it is again, there's the early Bronze Age wall, there's the Middle Bronze Age stuff, there's one tower entry, there's a second tower entry for the gate tower, and that's the main entrance to the city. The day we found that was a pretty cool day. Lot sat in the gateway of Sodom. That's the gate to the city. Well, here's what it looks like today after 3 seasons of excavation. You have a gate to the city, and this is my just a little quickie attempt to show how it looks on the landscape, but our architect laughed at me and he said no. He said, let's do it right. So this is the top drawing of the excavation. There's a pillared entry, probably a light well going into it to get some light into that entry room. And here's Lane and I'm standing in the tower, he's standing in the gate. This is what it looks like. Here's another one of my silly attempts. And he took one look at that and said, why don't you just let me do a drawing? Good one. And so, but that's to scale, by the way. That's the way it would look to scale. Here's his version of it. The restoration of the Middle Bronze Age gate from the time of Abraham. Lot's gate. So, pretty exciting stuff. There's the city. I won't go into that, but he actually put the waterworks in the right place. But all that, geography, all of that's fun, isn't it? But nobody cares. Everybody wants to know how it was destroyed. It's Sodom, for Pete's sake. How bad was it? Was it really destroyed? How bad was it? So let's close with this. Look at this. Even on the upper tail, we're 700 years. You have a 700-year occupational hiatus. Best watered agricultural land in the region. Sodom was destroyed 700 years. Nobody set foot in the valley, in that part of the valley. There's over a meter of black ash and destruction debris at that point. It's really quite phenomenal. Here's some of the bricks. They don't build with fired brick, they build with sun-dried brick, but some of the bricks in some of the buildings are fired so hard from heat that they ring like porcelain when you hit them with a trowel. Here's one of the mud bricks, hard as nails. Here's some roofing material, fired like pottery. Just wattle and daub, you can see the sticks running through it. But it's fired hard. Now this is Iron Age debris going down. But down there in the bottom, you break into the Middle Bronze Age. You go back 700 years from that rock to that. You jump it back 7 centuries. So nobody lived there for 7 centuries. In that area, we found this, and Dr. Burley knows this little hunk of stuff. It's a Middle Bronze Age storage jar sherd. Okay. Here's the other side of it. That's elemental carbon separation. That black stuff. That's calcium separation. Little nodules, calcium in it. What's interesting about this is those two materials are physically identical, almost in every way. That's the Middle Bronze pottery sherd. That's trinitite from ground zero. That's from the Trinity site. The explosion of the first atomic bomb. They're physically identical. We assume that the physical cause is similar. Don't run out of here and say, Dr. Collins said that Sodom was destroyed by an alien nuclear bomb. Somebody did that to me once. It's like, don't do that. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is the temperature range is similar. To produce a similar effect, you need similar cause. Okay? Now all this is being analyzed. We now have, every week we get another one jumps on board. We have 7 university labs now across the country analyzing samples of this, samples of other stuff, ash. By the way, there's no iron to be found in this part of the world, in the geology. If you pull ash off of our exterior gate plaza, which is a half a meter of black ash, about the consistency and weight of wheat flour, just fine ash, it'll dance for you with a magnet. It's got iron in it. And there's all kinds of other weird stuff that here's some desert glass or impact glass. This is being analyzed by somebody. I don't even know where it is. I think it's the University of Northern Arizona. There's human bone scatter. You know, there's bits and pieces of people in the ash, ribs and little bones, and there's also toys. That's a wheel to a cart, beads, pieces of jewelry. Here's scarabs. Here's that ash. This is just from the gate site. It's really incredible. Look at this ash here. That's a fallen wall. Look at the ash underneath it. It's really amazing. Here it is again. Just solid ash, and the wall eventually topples on top of that layer. All kinds of goodies in the ash. That has a story, but I won't go into it. All right. Now look at this. If you go to all these sites, if you take every one of these roads and go out to the first big city you find, they all are going just fine in the late Bronze Age. Right? Everybody just went from the Middle Bronze Age to the late Bronze Age, and everybody's doing okay, except for how many late Bronze Age sites from the next period here? 0. Something punched a hole in the Bronze Age. Something punched a hole in the Bronze Age, and nobody set foot in that. Nobody built so much as a hut there for the next 700 years. The water didn't go away. We think something else scared them. So here's, to walk you through the science, here it is. Early Bronze Age civilization on the eastern Jordan Disk with Tal Hammam as its cultural center flourished continuously for over 2,500 years. No breaks. Second fact. This Bronze Age civilization, including Tal Hammam, came to an abrupt termination toward the end of the Middle Bronze Age. And the area, the entire 600 square kilometers of the area, remained without cities and towns for the next 7 centuries. Here's the question that you ask on the basis of those 2 archaeological facts. Here's the question. Why did the best watered agricultural land in the region remain without cities and towns for the ensuing 7 centuries following its MB2 destruction? Okay, we'll just leave it. How's that? Anyway. Now, I can quit right there, and we can go do our thing, and we can come back and maybe do this after the break.
Yeah, keep going.
For those that want to stay. Huh?
How does the audience feel? You want to
This just takes about 10 minutes.
Keep going. Keep going.
Okay.
Anybody here under 18? All right. Here it is. This is really touchy stuff. But I have done this in a few locations, so mostly academics. It works. There's a weird story in the book of Genesis associated with Sodom. And that's the attempted abduction of the angels in Genesis 19. Okay, I don't care how you slice it. I don't care, if you're a far right-wing fundamentalist conservative Baptist. If you're honest with yourself, this story is still weird. Okay, all right. So, we call this the Minoan connection. I can't really go into everything because Dr. Lane Rittmeyer and his wife, I just got back from Crete. They went and did some more research on this. Absolutely stunning. It's just mind-boggling. But anyway, here's the passage. Before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, surrounded the house, both young and old. Young men, old men. Representing all the people from every quarter. In fact, this is a representative group of the whole population. And they called to Lot and said to him, "Where are the men?" These are the 2 angels. It doesn't say angels. It just says 2 messengers, what the word means, who came to deliver some news that they better get out of town quick. Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out so we can have sexual relations with them. By the way, these are angels. Can I just speculate a little bit? I always think of angels as handsome, comely kind of people. Not ugly. I mean, if you saw somebody, just big, fat, old, and ugly. Who are you? I'm an angel. Yeah. But they came to you, they had this musculature, and they were just striking human beings, right? Or looked like human beings. They said, yeah, I'm an angel. Yeah, that's a little more believable. So these are good-looking, young in their prime-looking humans to the men of Sodom. And so as they're walking into the city, what do you suppose the Sodomite men are doing?
Lusty.
Talking. Did you see those? Okay. And so the word got around quick. Okay. Oh, by the way, there's one little piece of this that I didn't say. You know what happened after this? They say to Lot, Lot says to them, well, they say, we're going to spend the night in the city square. Lot says, no, come into my house. You got to be under my protection. Not here. You're not throwing your sleeping bag in the city square. Okay? Come with me. So, many, many interesting things about the story. Now we have some very remarkable archaeological evidence of a direct connection between Sodom and the institutional, and I've spelled it in the Greek manner here. You won't find it in an English dictionary like this. Pederastia. If you look at pederasty, basically it's going to say anal sex. In your English dictionary, that's not what it means. I'll tell you what it means in a historical, cultural context here. We found a connection between the institutional pederastia of the Bronze Age Minoan culture of Crete, which, by the way, I believe it was Plato accused King Minos of Crete of instituting this aberrant behavior for the purpose of population control on the island. To take the sexual energy of the males and turn it towards the males and away from the females, and it wouldn't produce so many children. Okay, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what Plato thought. But anyway, here's what we got. We fully expected to find 4 or 6 chambered Bronze Age gate, Middle Bronze Age gate, when we excavated the interior of the gate. But something else happened. We found pillars. There is no pillared gateway anywhere in any Bronze Age excavation in the southern Levant, not in Israel, not in Jordan, not in Syria. We weren't even expecting to find it. In fact, if I went back to the theoretical drawing of the previous year before we discovered this, Lane drew it as a 6-chambered gate with walls here.
You can't
Yeah. He put walls here, not pillars. That's what we were expecting. I mean, it was like a predictable thing you could do. But guess what? This thing's pillared. By the way, we now know that for this last season, underneath these pillars are other pillars. We followed this thing back 2,000 years. They've been building pillars in this spot, in this gate, for 2,000 years. Where did they get that? Where did it come from? Well, guess what? And by the way, we think that's a light well, or an architect thinks it's a light well. Otherwise, it'd be awfully dark in there. Pillared Minoan-style architecture is atypical for Bronze Age Canaan. Where do you find pillared buildings and gatehouses? On Crete during the Bronze Age. That's where you find them. This linked up really fast. This guy, on our early Bronze Age pottery, we have a bull. You see nice features. He's got horns, he's got eyes, he's even got ears, he's got eyes, he's got mouth, he's got a little lip, okay? Now, let's go to Crete, to the Middle Bronze Age. Down horns. Almost everybody else makes up horns. They make down horns. Why? Because they were bull jumpers. That's what you see when you're jumping a bull. I don't care if the bull's horns go out or up. When you're above the bull, that's what you see. And there it is. This is a Minoan style, rare in Canaan, except as if it's traded in by the Minoans. Strabo. Now, so we have it, and there's a whole lot more, but I can't go into it. But suffice it, we made that connection culturally. Strabo, the first century Greek explorer, and modern scholars document the institutional pederastia that formed the structure of society on Crete during the Bronze Age. Here it is. It was a fundamental societal structure and a requirement of adolescent male upbringing. This has nothing to do with homosexuality per se. It has everything to do with how they raised their boys. Every boy, without exception. They didn't ask them if they were heterosexual or had homosexual tendencies. This is the way all of them, 100% of them, were raised. Okay? Here's the way it works. Male relations with women, who often lived in separate houses or villages, we're talking about Crete here, were reserved for producing children. Or was reduced for producing children. A male child was raised by his mother until age 12. At which time he was given over to a 22-year-old male called an Erastes, or lover, in a formal, intimate relationship for 8 years. After which period the process repeated itself. In other words, the now 30-year-old male was thus eligible to take a wife. He didn't have to, but he could. While the now 20-year-old graduate, or ephebe, beloved, took on his own 12-year-old beloved, or eronymos, and on it went. Every male child who turns 12 is given over. Now, this is true. You study the 300, the Spartans. You saw the movie. This was adopted 100% by the Spartan military. This is the way it worked. This is the way the Greek military worked. The Athenian military. You couldn't vote in the first democracy at Athens until you had gone through this pederastic process. It was true of all cultures, going east into Canaan, Mesopotamia, almost every single military culture, including the samurai culture of Japan, worked this way. That's the way it worked. Okay?
Like the sacred band of thieves.
On and on and on. And Lawrence of Arabia adopted the practice when he hit the land. Okay? So anyway, this was the foundation of Minoan society. But Cretan pederastia has a unique feature that none of the others have. It's a ritual kidnapping at the beginning of this relationship. Influential men in Minoan society would send out a gang of ritual abductors to kidnap a desired eromenos. They would ask permission from the guardian to conduct the ritual kidnapping. It was all ritualized. Okay? It was considered a cultural slap in the face to the Erastes if this accepted and honored cultural practice was refused. So he didn't refuse. They made the request. The parent would say, "What time you coming? What time are the abductors coming?" And off they would go. And that's how they did it. Now, what's interesting is the conduct of Minoan-style pederastic society of Sodom, if we truly have this connection, and it's the passage in the Bible that really solidifies the connection, would have been offensive to even the indigenous Canaanites who themselves practiced child sacrifice along with male and female ritual prostitution. This was not necessarily a feature of the standard Canaanite institutions of society and war. And it probably would have been a little bit off color to the migrant Mesopotamians, like Abraham and his Hebrew clan. So, the outcry against Sodom was great. Did you ever wonder who was outcrying against Sodom? Lot lived there, for Pete's sake. And Abraham was buddies with the king of Sodom. The king of Sodom actually accompanied Abraham to go visit Melchizedek after the Battle of the Kings of Genesis 14. That's weird. But anyway, Lot had made a home for himself in Sodom. It's interesting to consider that Lot's sons-in-law did not leave the city. Now, they were already betrothed to his two daughters. They refused to leave the city. I think it was because they had not completed the required 8 years as pederastic mentors to their young lovers, which was required by their social structure. They couldn't leave. The time was not yet. So they just blew Abraham off, blew the angels off, and decided to stay in the city while Lot and the rest of the family took off. According to the Hebrew Scriptures, why did Yahweh destroy Sodom? It wasn't because of the attempted abduction of the angels. I'll tell you how we know that. If God would have destroyed Sodom because of their sexual practices, He would have had to have destroyed everything in the Mediterranean basin all the way to Japan. Okay? Because that's the way it worked in so many of the cultures. That wasn't why God destroyed Sodom. There's only one passage in the entire Bible from God's mouth to our ear given the reason for Sodom's destruction. Here it is. Now this was the sin of Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, unconcerned. They did not help the poor and needy. They were haughty and did detestable things before me. I'm sure the detestable things would have kind of included all that, but that's the reason God destroyed Sodom. It kind of sounds like America. We're guilty of the same stuff. Sodomy should have been the term applied to not taking care of the poor and the needy. Sodomy should have been the term for the arrogant and the overfed.
Wealth inequality.
That's the reason God destroyed Sodom. So let's be biblical about this. Let's go with it. By the way, Sodom was already targeted for destruction before we ever find out anything about this perverse sexual behavior. It was already on the list. Okay. Now, the Sodom narratives carefully mark out a location for the cities of the plain. Ruins actually exist in that location, and the destruction of the city is commensurate with the description in the text. All that cannot be a mere coincidence. And, whoops. If in the past archaeologists and scholars had taken the Sodom tale seriously, they would have discovered the civilization in the land of the Kikar a long time ago, but they didn't. I'll tell you why. They didn't take the Bible seriously, and they didn't find what the Bible talked about. But we did, and we took it seriously, and we found it. So, I mean, it's not a big deal on our end. We just followed the text. And there it is. So it's there in the right place. It's there in the right time frame. Has all the right stuff to be the city of Sodom. And so I say, the Bible and the trowel were pretty darn good together after all. Thank you.
Okay, very interesting talk. We are a bit over time here, so I'm going to suggest we go ahead and take our break. The folks who need to go home can head out, and then we will reconvene in 10 minutes.